People, today I have 10 glass decor DIYs for you. Some are easy and some are going to require a little bit of elbow grease, but most of the pieces you can pick up for just around $1 that can be found in two of my favorite stores to pop in and shop at, Dollar General and Dollar Tree. For this piece, I decided to pick up this little tray. I thought I had a couple at home, but none with the handles, kind of like this. And you're going to need some shot glasses. I'm just kidding, they're dessert glasses, but they remind me of shot glasses. You thought we were about to do a little bit more than DIY for a second, didn't you? Paint this sucker up whatever color you want. I like antique Waverly wax, so that's what I'm using here with a little sponge just cut up. Once it dried, I took our little dessert glasses and arranged them in the center of this tray. While I was at Dollar Tree, I also picked up some of these rocks. I didn't have any, shockingly enough. And I just sprinkled them on in our dessert glasses. I filled them partially, well, that one's a little overflowing, but I filled them most of the way up and then took some greenery pieces, cut them down to size, and then stuck them in the center. Now I did have to arrange the rocks around them as well to make sure that they held in place because they were trying to fall on me, and took some more rocks in the black and just popped them right in here. I love how this piece turned out. I say this all the time, do not skip out on Dollar General. They have tons of glass pieces for just $1. We're going to be using this little mason jar piece, and we're going to do the Mod Podge swirl on the inside of it to make it look fancy schmancy. We're going to need some Mod Podge glossy, okay, glossy. And you're going to need a good glue that you can attach to glass or metal. Stop trying to use hot glue on glass, okay? Just stop doing it. We're going to turn this into like a night light, and I want it, just in case, you know, the light dies, I want it to be able to unscrew it. So we are taking some of this glue and attaching our lid on to our wood base. You could use any wood base. I picked these up, I think, from Hobby Lobby. They could be from Dollar Tree, but don't quote me on that. Any wood base, people, pick a base and just, you know, glue the lid down. That's all we're doing here. And then we're gonna make sure, look, I know I said no hot glue, but we're just getting that quick bond on there. I got the other good glue on there. Stop giving me a hard time. To paint the piece, I busted out my Dixie Belle chalk paint because it's been my experience that good chalk paint, usually you can get one coat, it's one and done if it's a colored paint. And I had so many days to get this done and so many projects, and I knew some were going to take me more than others or longer than others, so one coat of this is what we did and we moved on. I made sure to clean the piece really well with some alcohol, and I did take a little kitchen knob that I had laying around and glued to the top just to make it look, you know, fancy schmancy. You don't have to add this. This piece is really eclectic, and I kind of just got artsy fartsy with it and decided to go with stamps. You could use stickers, you could decoupage on this in little sections if you want. There's no right or wrong way to create this piece. I picked these up from Timo, these little stamp pieces, and they are stickers. Now, if you're going to put stickers on here, be mindful because as the jar curls, your sticker is going to curl and it's going to create wrinkles. I wasn't too worried about that because this is going to be vintage anyway with the style of the stamps that I'm using. If you can't tell, look how fabulous these are. I love these so much. And quickly, I do want to let y'all know that when you're working with glass, you can leave fingerprints on them. So use gloves, use a paper towel, or put your fingers in places that it's not going to actually be touching the glass, or you'll get them all over it. I am so grateful to somebody that mentioned about using the paper towel in the comments because I try not to waste my gloves if I don't have to. And yes, I do listen to the comments. So I love that a lot of you will put knowledgeable information down there because people check out the comments, and it's just a great way to help everyone learn and grow. Some of you, though, you need to check your comment etiquette, okay? Okay? Be nice to my comments. Now we're going to get our swirl on, and we're using a paintbrush to just take that glossy Mod Podge, and we're starting our swirl. Little swirls from the bottom up. Now, I will tell you one thing that I learned through this process. Here's why most people that I've seen with the Mod Podge swirl use their fingers. The brush creates little bubbles. Now it wasn't horrible, okay? It wasn't horrible. I did let this dry for an hour and then I added another layer on top of this. I would advise to do a third layer even depending on what it looks like once you put your little fairy lights in there. I felt like mine could have possibly used a third. I'm just taking a little bit of Dixie Belle's gilding wax to add a little bit of black around here. You could have did the same thing with black paint. I just happen to like using this stuff, so I used that. And I'm adding this little piece of black embedded gem, whatever you want to call it, ribbon to the top and the bottom. Like I said, really eclectic. It's probably not everyone's style, but take the idea and remix it into what works for you and your home decor or your craft style. But at the end of the day, I absolutely love how this turned out. And in case you didn't notice, I did take some of Dollar Tree's transfers and rub some on where I felt there were little spaces that the stamps left. This is such a unique piece. I hope you guys enjoy it. One of my favorite things that Dollar General carries are these glass jars. They even have smaller ones that are only $1. These are $2, and I've been dying to bring one home and actually make something with it. Well, not just something, I had an idea for this. And of course, before we get started, I'm giving it a nice little scrub down with our alcohol here. I do plan on selling a few pieces of these at my vendor space, so I want to make sure they're up to par. And here's our beautiful little gem of a napkin we're going to be using. Isn't she darling? Absolutely adorable. And for our main color for the paint, we're going to be using this ballet, however you want to pronounce it, slipper paint by Waverly. And we're just going to tappity tap 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 all over the jar. I like pouncing whenever I'm doing a glass for the first layer. It just gets it on there better than using a paintbrush, and it has strokes. If I'm going to use paintbrush, I will go over it the second time with the paintbrush and then sand it down. I did not sand anything down with this. I wanted it to have a little bit of a texture look on here, and then I made sure to glue down our lid really well so it wouldn't fall apart. Because that's the part we're going to be decoupaging. Not the whole jar, not the whole jar, just the lid. But first I'm going to give it a nice coat of gesso. If you guys have not used acrylic gesso, this stuff is awesome for a medium, especially when you're working with glass or a metal, something like that. You just pop it on there. One coat usually does the trick. It's thick and it just gives a really nice base. And I wanted to kind of cut my time in half here. Again, making so many projects. So acrylic gesso is an amazing way to go. And it dries fairly quickly. So I let that dry. And while that's drying, I came in with a nice little array of colors for us to speckle, you know, all over. We're going to flick some paint. Now, if you have a toothbrush, I highly recommend that. I did not have any spare toothbrush. I don't know why. Like, what is wrong with me? Brandy, you're at Dollar Tree. Grab some toothbrushes so you have them. And you're just going to flick your different colors that match your napkin all over this until you're happy with that. And then take some solid color. That's completely up to you. I'm using white here. And I'm just going over the raised part so those flowers pop out. And that's all. And whether you're giving this as a gift, you're keeping it for yourself, or you're making it to sell, let this cure for 24 hours with just the paint and then put your sealer on. This is just going to allow it a little bit more time to harden, and it's going to ensure those bonds really well. It is tricky decoupaging the lids of these because you got those creases. Even though we glued it in there, there's still those gaps. If you want, you can fill it with clay or some chalk paint and then let that cure. I was not too worried about that. I decided to take my sponge and just press down in those creases. And I did go over this lid 2 different times after to make sure it had a really nice seal on there. And on the sides, we had a couple gaps because, you know, obviously the napkin didn't go around the whole thing. And I didn't want it being bent in a bunch of sections. So I just tore little flowers off, decoupaged them on there. And then I made sure to take a little sander and get all the extra bits. And like I said, I did go over this little lid twice after I allowed the first application to dry. And at this point, people, you can leave this or you can decorate it. And I decided to give it a little bit of a shabby chic kind of feel. I cut down a piece of burlap into a square and then I screwed the lid tightly down on top of it. And then I took some scissors and kind of cut around, making it a little wobbly, and then pulled some of the edges to give it some, frayed bits. Once I was finished with this, I took some paper that I had from Hobby Lobby and I cut the shape of a tag. If you have a tag, you could use one of them and easily decoupage the paper on top of them. I did not, so I just cut a tag shape out of the paper and then took this paint in the bucket transfer from Dollar Tree. Oh my. Oh my god, I had it backwards the whole time. I was rubbing the design off. Oh my god. Okay, I'm done for the day. Those transfers are so tricky. I don't care what none of y'all say, okay? Use would have did the same thing. I could not tell that it was backwards. I fixed it though. I found another transfer and put our little tag. I did add some little fringed ribbon around the edge. I love how this piece turned out so much. For this one, I wanted to make a floating candle piece that was glitzy and glam, and I grabbed a few little pieces that I felt would help me create that. These mirrors, pick one. I went with the circle one. I thought that was just gonna be the best here, but I think the square would work with this idea as well. This is super simple. The worst part is the dry time. I know, the dreaded dry time. Nobody wants to wait for drying. Excuse me, people, while I interrupt your DIYs with a little look what I learned announcement. I'm not going to stop doing my hack videos, but I learn new stuff all the time, and I just want to share this with you. I found out that by doing myself, as I'm wiping all this glass, that if you leave a little bit of residue from your stickers, that alcohol, people, who's been holding out on this with me? It wipes it right off. I could not believe it. I was like, get out of here. So if you didn't know, now you know. This was amazing. You're welcome. Moving on, we're going to take some of these glittery, messy balls that I picked up from Dollar Tree and just fill up this jar with them. And obviously not that much. That was too much, okay? And they just started and I had to go chase them and, and I took some out. Anyhow, we're going to also need E6000, and I don't like this stuff, just to be clear. I don't like how it smells. I only use this on glass, and that's sometimes. Most of the time, I use my Gorilla Glue gel. So I mix this up a little bit because the Gorilla Glue gel will catch like within a minute of just sitting in a spot, and then I can carry on. So I put a little bit of both of them on there, and I put the mirror on the bottom, so this way our little glittery balls didn't fall off. I then glued more on the bottom of this and put our top on here. I love this so, so much. Obviously, my candle's a little on the half, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm perpetrating a little bit right here, showing you two of the dessert glasses, but really we're only going to use one, and that's because we didn't have enough of these. So if you're going to do this DIY, grab 2 bags of these at Dollar Tree. Next, we're going to need to bring in the miter shears, and that's because we're going to cut these little wood pieces up into different sizes. There's really no right or wrong way for this. Just cut some down, leave some the normal size, and then take yourself 3 pieces of twine to attach right next to one another. Now I tape these down to the table to make these easy to apply some tacky glue and our little wood dowels, so we can just wrap the whole thing around our dessert glasses. I was struggling trying to just glue them on, so I figured this might be a better way. Once I got them all put on the tacky glue, I let them dry for just a little bit and then took the pieces and tied a little bow and added a little button on these, and it turned out so cute. You can never have enough tea light ideas as far as I'm concerned, and Dollar Tree definitely has one of the best deals on these joints when you get 4 in a pack for $1.25. To recreate this piece, you're going to need a 1x3 and a hammer, because if you can't tell, I beat the piece up. Now, I did it off camera just to kind of save time, but there's no right or wrong way to really beat up the board. Just go ham, scrape it up, you'll be good. These tea light pieces fit perfectly in the center of a 1x3, and I'm going to take a little bit of this. I really wanted this color. I like using acrylic paint mostly when I'm doing some stain art, but I wanted to use this color, so I just watered it down more so than I would the acrylic paint. And next we're just gonna take this paint and stay in a grain. Doesn't matter what grain, pick one. Whatever side you want it in the middle, you go right ahead. Just stay in the grain where you can genuinely see there is natural strokes in the wood, and go all the way down with your piece. And you can use different colors. You can do as many of these as you want. Just make sure you're staying in the grain so it looks natural, and then take a stain color. I'm using this because honestly, I love the fact that it doesn't have a smell to it. So I like working with this when I'm doing projects like this because I tend to be doing this for quite some time. These pieces usually take me at least an hour just to get the trim going, because you have to make sure that it's darker where that section meets the light color, and then you blend it out. You're also going to make sure that you're going in heavy in the little grooves that you created with beating the board up. So it just takes a little bit of time to make sure that that color you're putting in there, that little pop, looks natural and purposeful. And I do that just by staying real close to the edges and then blending it out to make the wood look like it's naturally turning that color and it has that pop in there. They always turn out so stunning. Feel free to seal this up however you want. I glued these tea lights down so I can sell this in my vendor space. I love these mugs from Dollar Tree. They're 1, gorgeous on their own. 2, they're huge. 3, you can decorate these however you want. So I decided we're going to actually take some of my glass paint. I hardly ever bust this stuff out anymore. And we're going to just create a little design to make us a succulent holder or a little plant holder. You guys could take this idea and do whatever you want with it, but that's what I'm creating here. And we're just taking different colors and drawing little wonky triangles, bigger pieces on the bottom, and then making them smaller as we go up to kind of fade into the glass top. They're going to look like this. You're going to want to go over this at least twice, and this stuff dries quick, people, so move quick. Okay, make sure you're moving super quick as you're going about this. If I had more time, I would have did a 3rd coat. You do you. Just letting you know what, I recommend. And then I'm taking some of this metallic paint and going around each one of the little pieces. This was very tedious and I wanted to rip my hair out after it started. But as you can see here, it was gorgeous with them. It was worth the struggle. These are my favorite glass pieces at Dollar Tree right now, and I've been wanting to customize my own textured ombre piece. I've been seeing the ombre out and the textured out really heavy this year, and I'm like, we're going to make our own. We're going to use some joint compound, just a little bit, and put into each one of our little bowls here, and then take some calcium carbonate. This is one of my favorite ways to make a texture with some paints. You can use whatever way you want. Baking soda will also work just fine. And we're going to use a lot of it. And then I'm taking 2 different paint colors. I'm going to use this one right here, and it's a chalk paint. And then we're going to use a little bit of this because I wanted it to be slightly lighter than it was, to mix in some with our other color, and then take this agave. And this is going to take you a couple minutes to mix up. You're going to make sure you do this very thoroughly, or you will have little poof powdery pockets as you're painting coming out in your texture. So make sure you do mix this up really well, and then you're able to get started. Your textured paint should look like this, nice and clumpy. There's even some little poof pockets coming up. I did mix it a little bit more, and right here is where I started mucking up. I started dabbing this on and I was like, hold on a minute, there's dents. So I got me a real thin paintbrush and just started going in between all the creases on both pieces, and then I came back in with the pouncer. It made my life so much easier. So if you're going to paint these, go in between the creases and then come back with the pouncer. To create an ombre or blended look, you're going to need 3 things if you're using 2 colors. You're going to need 1 pouncer or 1 brush for each color, and then you're going to need your blend brush or pouncer. So since I'm using pouncers, I had 1 for each color, and then I had 1 plain little piece of sponge I cut that I'm going to use for my blend piece. And I did the same thing at the bottom. Look at me. You see me pounce at first and I was like, oh, I forgot to go in between the lines. So my mind skips me so many times. It's like going a mile a minute and I'm over here just trying to catch up. So I went in between all the little pieces and then came back in with our pouncer. You're going to want to let this completely dry before you start blending. This way your base colors are on here. And here you'll notice this is a little wet. That's because I started doing it and forgot to film. So to get our ombre on, if you want to leave your piece like this, you go right ahead. Okay, there's nothing wrong with just the two tones without the ombre. But to get an ombre look, you're going to want to take your two colors, make them nice and wet right next to each other. And then you're going to want to take your plain sponge or whatever brush, wet it up. Okay, make sure it is wet and no color on it. And then put it right in between where those two colors meet. And you're going to tappity tap tap tap, or you're going to brush, 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 brush. And these colors are going to gently blend together, getting rid of that harsh line. And sometimes you might need to switch out your sponge, or if you're using a paintbrush, a lot of times I will clean it in between doing this, because the more you do this, the more color is going to get on your plain piece, and then you'll have too much transferring from one side to the other. For the first piece right here, I decided to bring that ombre right up to the top. And for the second one, I left it down lower to the bottom. So you guys had two options. But before I did the second one, I wanted to just share with you guys the difference between two-tone and an ombre, so you guys could see both look beautiful, especially with these colors. And then for the final reveal, I'm just showing you here how I blended the two pieces. And for this first one here, you can see that the ombre is lower to the bottom and just gently blended. And the second one, you can see that it's heavily blended and goes all the way up to the top. Both you can use the same technique that I showed. But which one of these is your favorite? For our last two projects, they're going to be two different plate DIYs. And again, you can pick these up from Dollar Tree. I'm going to start off by putting our beautiful napkin that I have here right onto the back of both of these. I'm going to use the same napkin for both plates, two different ideas, or different ideas on each plate. Make sure you get your sneaky layers off the back there, so we just have the top decorative layer, and then we're going to bring in our sponge. I like to use this to help me apply napkin decoupage to certain things for certain projects. It is a dry sponge. It is not wet. It helps to grab the extra Mod Podge that seeps through the porous napkins. This is the medium I'm using here, and I am going to do this section by section. Less is more whenever you're decoupaging a napkin onto something. I will say that the larger the surface you're trying to cover and the more you put on, since you're only doing a thin layer, you have a small window of time because it will start to dry almost immediately. So I just did the bottom of the plate first, and I used our little sponge to kind of press that down, and then I went around the outside of the plate. If you're a rebel and you want to do the whole thing and press it down, you go right ahead. I didn't want to mess that up because these are going to go in my vendor space. And as you can see here, even though I'm taking the sponge and rubbing it over the napkin, I'm doing it very gingerly. I'm not being tough with the sponge and applying a lot of pressure because the napkins are thin, and the Mod Podge, since it's on glass, it's not like it's on wood and seeping into anything. It's literally riding on the top, so it's super easy to tear your napkin when you're doing this. I decoupaged the other plate off camera, so this way you didn't have to watch me do the same thing twice. Now the decorating aspect I am doing separately because they're two entirely different ideas. But as you can see here, I left a little bit of the napkin around the edges, and I'm trying to show you here. I get asked a lot about whether or not to paint or whether or not to leave things when I'm doing glass. So to have a little fun, I'm going to paint one with the paint and I'm going to leave one translucent. See if you guys can tell which one is which project I'm doing with which. And at the end, I'm going to tell you anyway. But make sure you do let that Mod Podge dry before you apply your paint so you don't have any ripping of your napkin. Adding the paint is going to make the design on the napkin pop out more, and not adding the paint is going to make it more translucent. Both are beautiful. For this one, we're going to use this stencil that I picked up from Walmart, and I'm taping the entire design down as much as I possibly can. Since the plate is bent, there were some gaps in between the stencil and the plate. I tried to eliminate that for bleed through by taking some of our Mod Podge and doing a layer over that. A lot of times this will help stop bleed through, and unfortunately, because there were some spaces in between around the edges, there was still a little bit of bleed through. I let the Mod Podge completely dry, and here it is, me just kind of showing you how it seals around the gaps on our plate. However, the Mod Podge did seep underneath of our little stencil, so that kind of bled into where the paint met. I don't know how to explain it, but I'll show you how to fix it. Just letting you know what's going on here. I just tap some white chalk paint on the top of here, and once that dried, I peeled this up. So if this ever happens to you, I love glass art and I paint a ton of glass. I don't always have videos on it, but I'm going to show you how to fix it. You just take a dotting tool, and chalk paint is so easy to manipulate, especially when it's on glass. So you just take the dotting tool right up around the edges where you have that chalk paint, and you just glide the dotting tool right along, and it will get rid of all the bumps, all the messed up areas, and you can make it as smooth as you want. You can even make a completely different design if you want. So I did that around the entire piece, just cleaning up everything. And when I was happy with that, I then took a really, really tiny paintbrush and I went back in with more chalk paint, touching up any cracking or any spots that I felt needed to be, you know, just rubbed and buffed on out to be beautiful. To bring out our flower a little bit more, I'm taking some of this metallic paint and just going around some edges to add in some highlights. I did sand the rest of the napkin off around the edge and took some of that glossy Mod Podge and sealed over the piece. It's just stunning. For this plate, we're going to paint the center white, and you're going to need to do several layers of this, and you know, Godspeed trying to make sure that circle is perfect. That was a struggle. Mine is still a little wonky, you know, it's questionable, but I got the look I was going for. I'm then taking some of Dollar Tree's transfers and a Primo transfer that I have. It's like a little, you know, poem type piece, little saying, and we're going to just rub these right on this paint. And it's really important that you allow that paint to dry, because if not, this is not going to transfer on here very well. And chalk paint will give you a better result than acrylic paint. You can use acrylic paint, but it takes like weeks for that to actually cure onto glass. And if you're trying to get a project done within 48 hours, the chalk paint's going to be the way to go. Unless you want to seal over the acrylic paint and then wait for that to dry, but you're still going to have to wait a day or two. Chalk paint you're able to do pretty much the same day when you're doing glass. Make sure you apply a sealer on this, and that's going to be it for this one. Real quick, pause the video and go down in the comments and let me know which one you think has the paint on the back and which one is translucent. All right, people, moment of truth. The one with the stencil is translucent. Did you guess right? I can't wait to read the comments. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, people. I hope you enjoyed all these glass DIYs. Thank you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you all. If you're looking for more DIY inspiration, I'm gonna link my handmade projects playlist right here for you to check out. And until next time.